Solving equations, Lesson C notes the definitions. Take a moment and pause the video and get down the definitions for solve, solution, inverse operation, and isolate the variable. When you're doing this, save some space in here because we're going to be writing some stuff in there. Okay. Solve. Solve is to find the value of the variable that makes the equation true. And the solution is the value of that variable that makes the equation true. So when you solve an equation, you find the solution. When you solve an equation, you find the solution. So I have 4 equations here. Let's start with these 2. We can use mental math to solve these equations, all right? What number plus 3 would give you 8? Well, x would be, in this case, would be 5, because 5 plus 3 is 8. What number minus 2 would give you 10? Well, in this case, x would equal 12, because 12 minus 2 is 10. For the next one, what number times 2 would give you 12? 6 times 2 is 12. And then what number divided by 3 is 5? 15 divided by 3 is 5. What I did there was I found the solution. I solved each equation and found the solution. The solution to the first problem is 5. To the second problem is 12. The solution to the next problem is 6. And the solution to the last problem is 15. So by solving, you find the solution. Again, the solution is the value of the variable that makes the equation true. If we would look at this equation, if I said that x was 3, then that would not be true. Therefore, 3 is not a solution to this equation. Now, for each of these, we were able to use mental math. But if you look at this problem here, this one's not as easy to solve or as quickly if we did it mentally. So we're going to learn a way to solve these equations, no matter what the numbers are, that makes it easy for us. Let's go back to the notes. Okay, so the inverse operation are operations that undo each other, or they're opposite operations. So operations that undo each other are, for example, addition and subtraction. So addition and subtraction are opposites of one another. Addition and subtraction are inverse operations. The opposite of multiplication is division. So multiplication and division are inverse operations. Also, if you square a number, the opposite of squaring a number is the square root. Now, to put that in more general terms, if you take the power, because x to the second power, x to the third power, x to the fourth power, if you take a power, the opposite of a power is the root. We will be talking more about these at a later time, but I just wanted to point out that they are inverse operations. So the operations we are going to be dealing with in this lesson are adding and subtracting, multiplication and division. So inverse operations are addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. Those are the ones we'll use in this lesson. Now isolate the variable. Isolate the variable means get the variable alone on one side of the equal sign using inverse operations. Isolate the variable means to get it alone. When you isolate something, it's alone. So if I go back to the original equations, if I look at these, I do the inverse operation. So the opposite of adding 3 would be to subtract 3. By doing this, it allows me to cancel this out, and the x is isolated. 8 minus 3 is 5. To isolate the variable in the second one, I would add 2 to both sides, because the inverse of negative 2 is positive 2, or the inverse of subtracting 2 is to add 2. This allows me to cancel the 2's, isolating the x, and 10 plus 2 is 12. This operation right here, that is multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. So I divide both sides by 2. Did you hear me keep saying divide both sides? add 3 or add 2 to both sides, subtract 3 from both sides, because an equation is a balance. All right, you have to keep it balanced. It's a balancing act. What you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side of the equation. So I cancel the 2's. That allows me to isolate the variable, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So the last one, this is division. So the opposite of division, or the inverse operation to division, is multiplication. So I multiply both sides by 3. That allows me to cancel the 3's, isolating the variable, and 5 times 3 is 15. Now I want you to pick up on something here. It might not be perfect, but look what I did on each of these. At least attempted to. I try to keep the equal signs lined up for the most part. It's important that you do this because when we start to get into more difficult problems, keeping the equal sign lined up will be extremely important. All right, let's look at this larger problem here. So I want to get rid of this number so I can isolate the x. So I'm going to add 292.8 to both sides. That allows me to cancel that out, isolating the variable. I keep my equal signs lined up. And then those the signs are different, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. And that would be the answer. Now, that problem, even though it wasn't easy to do it mentally, by using the inverse operation, I was able to isolate the variable and solve the equation to find a solution of negative 144.7. So again, you want to use inverse operations to isolate the variable. And to solve an algebraic equation, you use inverse operations to isolate the variable. In other words, we are going to get our variable terms to one side of the equation and non-variable terms to the other side of the equation. And what separates the two sides of the equation? An equal sign. If you have any questions on the definitions, let me know.